Matt, welcome. Thank you for coming to my podcast.
Thrilled to be here.
Thank you. This is the name of the podcast, as you know, is I'll Call My Guy. It's sort of like I got a guy, and I know as a New Yorker you are you know that expression. And one of the focuses of the podcast is talking about relationships, and I'm proud to say that you're one of my guys. And you know, I like to explore the nature of the relationships that we make. You're obviously in the service industry like me. You're serving people that are purchasing and selling homes or building homes, and so so that's what we're trying to talk about here, and hope we can gain some of your wisdom, and I can pick up some advice from you on how to build my business as well.
Absolutely.
You grew up in New York, right?
I did, yeah.
What part?
Carmel, New York, yeah.
So is that upstate?
No, Putnam County. So just about an hour north of New York City.
New York City, and you grew up there, and you went to college?
I was born on Long Island.
Right.
Was on Long Island until I was 3.
To intact family?
Yeah. My parents divorced when I was in middle school.
Middle school.
Yeah.
And your dad's was a firefighter.
My father was FDNY in the city.
In the city, which ladder?
Well, he was in several, but he started in Brooklyn. And then he went into the Bronx, and he was a lieutenant at Ladder 49 in the Bronx, and then he was a captain at Ladder 44 in the Bronx, and then he was a battalion chief for the 17th Battalion. So,
and was he there on 9/11?
Yeah, so it's kind of wild. My father did 32 or 33 years in New York City Fire Department. He got on the job when he was exactly 21. And so he retired. His official day of retirement was in January of 2001.
Right, but 9 months before.
So 9 months, yeah. Wow. So and he went out. I don't think he would have retired. He had a injury that prevented him from being able to continue. So he blew out his shoulder, and he couldn't get his arm right.
Those are some tough dudes.
No question. I mean,
was he like that as a parent?
100%, absolutely.
Tough guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Was hard to pet, like a guy that's like. Would he hug you?
Yeah, I mean. I don't have a lot of it wasn't an incredibly nurturing relationship.
Right. Tough love.
I never questioned that my father loved me.
Right.
But it wasn't there wasn't a whole lot of
hugs and
come
kisses.
Sit on my lap, buddy.
Read
Yeah, we didn't do a lot of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And what did your mom do?
My mom, until my parents split up, my mom was, stay-at-home mom.
All right, okay.
She went to Columbia, got her MSW.
Wow.
And then worked for the state of Connecticut for the
Isn't that
Department
crazy,
of Mental Health
that
Services.
A New Yorker in the 80s, right, late 70s, early 80s, because we're on the same age, could have a one-income family. And time period is so unique in history. I think they're gonna look at this transition for our generation as a real pinnacle point culturally, because we went from the greatest generation, right, World War II, basically this mobilization of an entire country that goes overseas, fights this war, saves humanity, right, from fascism. And then they all have a ton of kids, the baby boomers, right? And they just have a ton of kids, and their American dream is just to live in peace and take a vacation.
Have
a good job.
Really, we're just kind of a simple way of being. I don't think at any point in time my father's pursuit was to be rich. It wasn't part of the conversation. Money wasn't a thing that we even considered. It wasn't part of the dynamic.
That's true.
There was no. It was take a couple vacations. Aren't we lucky? We get to go on one ski trip a year. We have a beautiful house in the country in Carmel, New York. It was a simpler. I sound like an old fart, but it was simpler, right? And something shifted between that generation and our generation, in that the focus became about accumulation and consumerism. Mm-hmm. And so we lost, I think, as a culture, we lost our way around the things that mattered. There was no question. I mean, I was the son of a fireman and a state worker. There was no question in my household about the civic responsibility that you had as a member of the human race. No question. And, talking about whether it was my parents are wonderful human beings who cared deeply for their neighbors. and wanted to contribute. They were flawed. All of us are flawed in some way, but there was no doubt that that's what they saw as their calling. And that's the household I grew up in. I don't see a lot of people like that anymore. There's just less and less of them. And where I grew up was all of my friends, their parents were cops, firemen, and teachers. All of them. That's who I grew up with. Just, your classic sort of salt of the earth kind of community driven people. And I do think that we've seen a shift. And I see it especially in my kids, who I've raised with a tremendous amount of intentionality around bringing a consciousness to this for them. And I think we've done a pretty good job. I think my kids have a more global understanding of their role in the world.
How it all fits together.
But I am one voice competing with a world of influence. And you hear the shit that comes out of my, you'll hear this as your kids get older, the stuff that will come out of your 17 and 18-year-old kid's mouth and be like, where the fuck did you hear that? Bullshit. Crap.
Stop it.
Vapid, just complete, just really kind of gross stuff.
No empathy.
And it's concerning to me. And at the same time, again, I'm a capitalist, obviously. I'm running a business, so it's not like I'm, a fireman. So I don't have a really strong ground to stand on other than I think we put the community first.
Well, but again, the reason why I wanted to talk about sort of your influence, your parents, which is, your origin story, is, you're just serving the community in a different way.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Right. Mm-hmm. You're not just churning and burning and trying to make money. You're also saying, a house is one of the most important or the biggest financial investment you'll ever make.
No question. I struggled with that a lot early in my career because, when you're the son of a firefighter who, came up in the 80s in the Bronx, right, who would come home smelling of soot and fire, and you knew that he was, putting his life on the line every night. Those are big shoes to fill, right?
Yeah.
And so early in my career, I struggled with the idea that the thing that I was doing was not inherently, it didn't have as much of a sort of altruistic, philanthropic sort of value to it until I started to really realize the amount of value that people were getting in working with me. And I recognized that I happened to have a unique skill in helping people, and that was something that I could be really proud of and confident in. And initially, when that was just about me, it was small. But now that it's about 30 other agents and a team, and we do 600 transactions a year, I realized that we've built something that is a bit of an immovable force.
You have your own fire station.
Yeah, that's helping a lot of people.
No, that's what it is. But that makes sense, though.
Matters
But that makes sense, that influence, because you're not, running into houses and running up with babies out of a house, but you're putting people in a place that they're going to call their home, they're going to make their life, and you're helping them achieve that, especially now in a market that's so there's so many people competing for it.
Yeah,
it's just a different take on that, and that's, I think, why your origin story is important.
Right now, what my industry is just, and yours too, by the way, is just loaded with people who wake up and say, who should I become in order to be this thing or get this thing?
Yes.
That drives me bananas.
Because there's no authenticity.
And nobody likes to work with that person.
There's no authenticity.
None at all.
But you remember what I did when I first went off on my own is, I was just trying to find my way, right? I was a big firm corporate guy. I said the easiest way for me to make money is closings, right? Because you could make money in real estate closings, a lot of money. But you got to do it all the time. And I knew nobody, so I set up shop. I think that's who you and I met. I literally set up shop at Keller Williams.
Yeah, I remember.
And I sat there, and people would walk by. I'm like, "What's your name?
Yeah,
nice to meet you."
Yeah.
And suddenly I had 20 realtors sending me shit.
Yep.
So nothing beats that because this looks like a nice guy. I'll give him some business.
And now, you talked about when you started, everybody goes through that process of transition. Who am I? You're a young entrepreneur. You're in your 20s or your early 30s, and you're thinking, I want to go build a business. And you look around and you look at the people that have been before you and you go, well, those people do it this way, so maybe I'll try that out. And so you try on different things. But the key for anybody who does listen to this that is starting a business is find who you are fast. The faster you figure out who you are, the more likely you'll attract the people that want to do business with you. And the better your life gets, because then you're only working with people that actually like who you really are, which means you don't have to show up any different. You don't have to pretend to be anything else. I don't have to put a 3-piece suit on every day, because it would be super strange if my clients saw me show up that way. They'd be like, "What's wrong with you? Are you going to a funeral?"
When people meet with me for a consult, sometimes I'm like this.
100%.
I'm like, this is who I am, man. You don't like it? I don't want you.
It's completely okay. Now, again, I'm not trying to like shit on professional standards or the way people operate, but like, don't wear a suit and tie if you don't want to wear a suit and tie. Like, if it's not your thing, you don't have to.
That's
you
right.
legit don't have to. A lot of those social conventions have gone. And I just think there's too many people out there that wake up every day trying to build something, measuring their success by someone else's yardstick.
No, it's and to that end, we other than I have this podcast, but the business that I built, which I have 2 lawyers, 2 paralegals, and a director of operations, and we're adding a 3rd lawyer in July. You know what my marketing budget has been for the last 3 years? 0.
Yeah, awesome.
0, and it's a combination of things. It's one. Building a lot of, I add all my clients or most of them to my Facebook and live my life, right?
Yeah.
Just to who I am.
Right.
2, it's being authentic, I think, like just who I am, and this is what you get. I work hard for people. But you also, what people forget is you still have to do a really good job.
100%.
Because
you
can't just build
right.
and get word of mouth unless you're really executing for people.
Yeah, so
because you have to do that. Otherwise, you'll fall. The whole thing will collapse.
So there's an interesting premise that I've been sort of playing with lately, particularly around my industry, which is that, and at the highest level of my industry, these are the teams that do kind of what we do here in Connecticut, but around the country, there's sort of an interesting, dynamic happening. Teams are leaving brokerages and making big announcements. Right? It's there's a lot of that movement, right? Which to me is just such a bunch of horse shit. It's a whole lot of look at me, look at me, look at me. But here's what I've found fascinating about it is that there are really 2 separate courses of conducting business. And again, in just about any field, there's the practitioner that is so committed to the skill and craft of what they do that they become excellent at it, that people are lining up to work with that person. And then there's the person that is so committed to creating influence around the craft. And they never put any effort into being better at the craft. Right. They just put all their effort into having influence around it.
Thought leader.
Or just making sure they have a giant following on Instagram talking about stuff. In my industry in particular, it's fascinating because the largest influencers sell no houses. The people it's like there's this massive confluence where they just make a decision at some point. Like, I've done enough of that. I think what I'll do now is make lots of videos instead of sell lots of real estate. And at some point, as a business owner, you got to make a choice. Are you an influencer or are you a practitioner? And I do believe in order to be the best at influence, you have to commit to that, which means you're not committed to your craft. You can't be an expert at both. It's not possible because somebody is outmaneuvering you at the thing that you do.
Right.
While you're worrying about your Instagram profile.
You got to be a good, like for me, you got to be a good lawyer.
That's right.
You got to be able to deliver results to people.
That's right.
Now, my industry is a little different because, as you know, I only, our singular focus is family law, custody, divorce, and whatnot. And, the joke is people sometimes come in and they're like, did you win your case? And I'm like, yeah, I win every case. They always get divorced.
Yeah, right.
Because they always get divorced.
Yeah,
yes,
right,
it's
right,
a win.
right.
It's not like litigation where it's, is the person liable or not liable, right? You go in, somebody hits you in a car, you fell down somewhere, you're either going to win or lose. It's binary.
Yeah, it's not a one-to-one negotiation.
No, but so if I have the case, either it settles and my client gets money if I'm a personal injury lawyer, or I go to court and I either get a judgment against them or I lose. So win or lose. Right. For us, I always get you divorced. The question is, what they really mean is, did you get a favorable result for your client? Because and you'll find this interesting. You could have a couple that's going through a divorce, and I can try the case with the same set of facts. Like we could literally have the people say the same thing.
Yeah.
With 5 different judges testify the same way. The 5 judges can issue an opinion that can be from here to here in terms of spectrum, and you could take all those to the appellate court, and they'll all be upheld. Right. Because there's so much discretion given to the judges.
Sure.
Credibility, likability, how the evidence came in, what they thought. So that's why there's huge sense of outcome. Now, what we've found is that depending on how things come in, typically things fall within a range here.
Yeah.
And because judges develop judicial philosophies, they're trained by the same people, and things tend to fall in. But again, you could have a settlement that could be 55-45 or 50-50 or 60-40. Now, if you have an assets that are 2-3 million bucks, that extra 10% is a lot of money.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if you're just regular people getting divorced, it's you're going to fall within a place like that. But yeah, so that's that's where it's different, where it's not binary for us. It's interesting. But I do find, and to your point, you still got to do a really good job.
You have to be great at your job.
Yep.
It's got to start with being great at it.
And then people hear it, like he did a really good job for me, or he cares.
Yeah. What I see in my industry now, which is troubling to me, and the reason you cited this earlier, 70% of real estate agents sold 0 homes last year. Now the market opportunities are down by over 30%.
Is this Connecticut you're talking about?
No, nationwide. So like in 2022, we did 6.1 million transactions nationwide. In 2024, we did 3.9. Wow. So like just transactions. We're in a transaction-driven business. So when there's just that many less at-bats. So the people that are mediocre in the business are, they're just getting washed out. But what you see is agents coming into the industry not focusing on getting great at the craft, shifting so hard toward this influence game versus actually just going out, shaking hands, and back to relationships and making relationships and trying to get into business with people that they can actually serve. Fundamentally, the reason that you're good at your job is that you provide a lot of value, and people feel really good about the value that you provide. Your counsel, your process, your experience, all that's worth something, and they pay you for that. It's the same exact thing in my business. But there's too many people that come into the real estate industry that think that the game is how many eyeballs do you get, and it never has been.
Oh, so where could the real estate, like if I'm just looking for a place and I go, let's say I say, hey Matt, like you give me one of the members of your team, and I say run an MLS search. It comes every week, and I text them and say, Dave, I want to see these 3 houses. Like, yeah, I'll set it up for Saturday. I'll meet you. Sure. I'll pick you up, and we go.
Yeah, great.
A monkey can do that.
So
that part.
Well,
I want to talk about where the value gets added.
I love
to the
this.
realtor.
Yeah, this is a great.
So I want to know about that
conversation
because anybody can make an appointment, and you guys that's all done it's all done by computers now. It used to be, as you remember, years ago in the 80s, my mother's best friend in the 80s, she was like one of the first people with a car phone. She was a killer realtor, and sometimes my mom was a single mom.
Yeah.
She used to watch me, and I'd go with her on showings.
Sure.
And literally, like, you'd have to call the other agent and be like, hey Debbie, could we come
Open
at
the
2
door.
o'clock?
Yeah.
And she'd have to meet you there because there's no lock boxes and all this shit, or they just started coming in. So like anybody can make an appointment.
Have you read any of these outcomes about AI writing legal briefs?
Oh, it's terrible.
Right. No. It's just have you read any?
Yes.
So you realize that's obviously happening.
It very much is happening, but I also know that like I use some AI for like in depositions where you can push all of the documents for the case on, and it's recording during the deposition, and it's alerting me saying, wait a second, that's inconsistent with this, so it could really be good, but not writing briefs is crazy.
Right. But so here's my point, is that you asked the question, like a monkey could do that. That's right. There's 2 parts to any professional services job. And whether you're talking about an accountant, you're talking about an attorney, or you're talking about a professional realtor, there's the functionary part. And the functionary part is call it the tactical doing of stuff. The opening a door, the scheduling an appointment, the sending the MLS search, there's all of that. Yeah. And then there's the fiduciary part. The fiduciary part is the part that says, okay, Rich, we have these options in front of us. Right. These are the things that we've talked about. This is the condition that you set up for us as far as what we need to make decisions about. Right. Here's all the different things that could potentially happen. Now, the fiduciary part starts to play out when somebody has wisdom, experience, time in the market. All these buyers that are in the market right now that are struggling to get houses under contract. I mean, I'm not saying this out of like bravado, but our buyers are not struggling. We're winning deals for them. Why?
That's why. Well, tell me that.
Because we have decades of experience understanding how to navigate the market, relationships with other agents, relationships with other agents. We understand how to put the proper contracts together that protect the client. And also, the key part of this is that you could easily look at a contract and say, but Matt, all you did is these 5 things. Right. But we got the client to a place where they understood the risk, the reward, what they were saying yes to, what they weren't, so that they go through that process thrilled, excited, happy, and understand the goal is in alignment with what I told my realtor I wanted. The key is that anybody can tell somebody, well, in order to get a house in this market, you have to waive your inspection. Anybody can say those words. And that, to your point, is where the monkey shows up. But only somebody who's skilled in the market understands how to explain to a client the risk of that and the reward, because there is a reward. The reward is you get to buy a fucking house.
Right.
You get to live somewhere that's not rent. You get to be in a home.
Right.
And like somebody said, I would never, you hear this stuff again, all the, the social media jockeys, I would never do it. It's like, well, it's okay. You don't have to because you live somewhere.
Right.
But somebody that needs to live somewhere has to make that decision. Like that decision they're being confronted with. And somebody's got to help them understand what that decision means.
So the value comes in at the point where you're trying to negotiate or put an offer in, because you usually have best and highest. You hear that every day now.
Well, you've got like all of these, there's all these things that show up that are laden with emotion and concern and worry. And there's dialogue that has to happen around it so that the customer understands what they're entering into and understands what's in their best interest. But they need to know what's in their best interest, and the only person that can help them do that is somebody that's experienced at it.
Right.
So that's, again, the fiduciary part of it is not. It's not the checking of the boxes or the opening of the doors. It's making sure that the client knows even what house to go to. Like the first thing you sat down and you posed a, I think of us as professional problem solvers, right? So you sat down and you said, the market's crazy. I have this condition in my real estate search and it didn't work. And I asked you a question. I said, have you considered building? And you were like, maybe not. And I thought, well, this is an option. Here's a couple of reasons why. And this is some stuff that we're seeing people have success with in the market. And I saw it in your eyes. You started thinking about it.
That's right.
Now, a professional does that. An amateur, a functionary doesn't. A functionary says to somebody, oh, you're having trouble in the market? Yeah, it's tough out there. That's the difference.
Right. You're trying to find solutions.
Now, if I find a solution to your problem and you wind up living in a house in a year that you built from the ground up, that you found, that you felt served in, you're sitting there going, thank God I found Matt Miale. That guy helped me. That's the job. That's the job. By the way, the aggregation of opportunities have increased by a factor of 25% to the top 10% of agents in the market since the NAR settlement, which is 100% what I predicted. I even think that you and I had a text exchange about it. Yes, I was sending you the stuff. And everybody was, again, predicting, the
doom
apocalypse. Oh my God, it's going to be terrible. And I was like, no, it's not. This actually serves the best professionals in the market, because I still believe that the value that I provide is worth it. Like obviously I do, otherwise I wouldn't wake up every day and go do it. Right. So I think that what we do is worth it. And I think that consumers vote with their feet. Like they vote with where they go. Literally nothing has changed since that. Nothing. In fact, buyer compensation across the board has increased since the NAR settlement, because more agents that were rank amateurs and not talking about it are, and they're positioning their value proposition, and consumers are by and large saying, yeah, we think that's worth it, which is wild.
And you and I have talked about this, because when I see stuff from time to time, I send it to you. Like Redfin shit the bed.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And I thought that was going to be the great disruptor.
Everybody is, people love to predict, people love to predict the demise of any industry.
You see it, you're like, oh my God, is this going to take it out?
Right. But the thing that people always underestimate, and listen, professional services is professional services. The thing that people always underestimate is how human behavior plays into decision making. Access to see, early on in the industry, let's just go back 40 years, the realtor's primary thing was access to listings. There was this thing called the MLS book, but the only person that got it was a broker. So in 1980, if you wanted to buy a house, there was no Zillow, there was no MLS. Like you had to call a realtor, and that realtor had their own listings and they had access to others, but they were the gatekeeper of information. And as the gatekeeper of information, they really held a lot of the power in the transaction. And so consumers felt like, oh boy, we're really stuck having to work with this guy. They didn't want to. And then Zillow showed up and said, actually, we're going to make all the information public. We're going to make it all public. And once we make it public, bye-bye realtor. Bye-bye realtor. But what happened was the information wasn't really the value. What happened was really good agents got really good at developing a value proposition around service, the fiduciary part. Because the functionary part, you're right, anybody could do it.
That's right. The value is this is a tough market. I need to find something, Matt. How do I win this?
What happens a lot for me, and this happens all over the country now, because I have relationships with people, business leaders all over the country, different parts of the, different industries. What happens now is funny is I'll get phone calls from people and they'll say, we're about to make an offer on a property. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. Because what they're doing is they're saying, I don't care that you didn't open the door. I don't care that you didn't fill out the forms. I don't care.
You know how to win, though.
I don't care that you didn't, talk to the agent. I want your opinion on this deal that I'm about to do. What do you think? And that is the value. There will always be space for that. Just like there's space for, professional financial planners and you could go buy your own stocks if you want. You could do that on Robinhood.
And the question is whether like on that stuff, like whether AI is going to, like, I know the relationships are there, but that I wonder with financial planners, if AI is going to sort of help.
AI is for sure going to, I think it will weed out those that are not super clear about what their value proposition is. And all of those functionary parts of the process will start to go away. So it would make, in my industry, in your industry, financial planning, insurance, it would not surprise me at all to see the field dwindle quite a bit. Yeah. To really, there's 1.7 million licensed realtors in the country with 3.9 million transactions. A lot of those people are going to have to go away. Like there's just not enough at bats for everybody. And the top 10% of agents are doing like 80% of the business.
Wow.
So there's this group of people that are just wayward and wandering, underemployed or not making any money.
So let's go back to like you then, because I want to learn a little bit more. So you obviously were just a one-man band for a while.
Yeah.
How many, now you're everyone, there's a lot of teams in these things. You have a team.
Yeah.
How big is your team?
Depends on the day.
Today?
Today we're about 30 full-time agents.
30 full-time agents.
Yeah, 30 full-time agents.
And you're still affiliated with Keller Williams?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So you have 30 full-time agents, and are you're not showing houses anymore, right?
No, sure.
You do?
Sure I am. Yeah,
you do?
absolutely.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah, no, I love the job. I still love the job. I do. Now, my everyday looks a lot different than it did, 15 years ago.
Sure, right.
But if a client calls me, somebody, if you called me and said, Matt, here's a house.
See this place?
Want to go see it? I might not show it to you the first time.
Right.
Somebody else might show it to you. But if you're like, we're pretty serious, I'll be like, cool, I'll meet you there. Let's go check it out. Let me just get my eyes on it.
Right, because you've seen a million houses.
Yeah, let me just get my eyes on it and make sure that this is the right house for you guys. And then let's do the counsel. So, have the consultation.
Well, right, that's where all the value comes from, because you've seen a million houses, you've done a million deals. You could say to me, Rich, I think this is a little pricey, or there's going to be heavy competition for this. There may be a way. Here's the way in.
That's right. Or are you sure this is the right deal? Because here's what you're going to have to do here, right? You told me early on, hey, Matt, I don't want to be in a bidding war and I'm not in a rush. 100% this property that you've decided you like is going to be a bidding war, and you better hurry the hell up.
And we have to figure out how we win it.
Are you okay with that? And like you might say, well, for this one, we might be okay with it.
Yeah, we really want it.
Yeah, okay, cool. You really want it. So here's what I'm going to tell you need to do, or you ought to consider, and do these 5 things, and that's the process.
So 30 agents, and then how much administrative staff do you have?
We have 7 W-2 employees. Yeah, so 7 W-2s. We also operate with a couple of, we have a couple of call them like 1099 independent contractors that effectively work on contract work. They're kind of in and out.
Okay, they do it for other people.
Yeah,
too,
that's right. But they're at the moment they're kind of full time for us.
And do you have space somewhere? Or do you work?
Yeah,
remotely?
we have an office in Newington.
Oh, nice.
So I bought a small building down there.
Oh, good. All right, that's good. So they do that, and then do you guys all ever meet in one place? Like
all the time.
Yeah.
So we have a pretty cool operating cadence on the team. We meet literally every morning, the entire team, every single person. We do it on Zoom. So we have a morning kickoff every day, 8:30. We treat it like a real business.
Yeah.
That's sort of the difference between your sort of traditional realtor and a high functioning, highly productive real estate team.
And you have people training. Like, do you take new agents?
We take some new agents, but it's definitely not our avatar for the perfect candidate for our team. And that's primarily because a brand new agent's runway to success is a long one. There's just the learning curve is very long, and we run fast. We're sort of like the way I define our team, like we're like an NFL sports team. Like we can't teach you how to lace up your shoes. Like you got to know how to put your equipment on, right? So there's a couple of things that you have to know before you get in the locker room with us that we just don't slow down to teach you. So somebody that's exceptionally talented might be able to catch up as a brand new agent.
For somebody maybe who's been for a couple of years,
that's actually who we really target. Is we really look for agents that have been in the business 2-3 years. They've done some transactions and they're starting to hit that very first ceiling of achievement where they're saying like, okay, I don't know what to do today. Like I know how to do a deal. I understand the mechanics of real estate, but they're all over the place because they're learning. So we bring a lot of structure to them.
And maybe they didn't have a good coach or a good mentor.
Totally. We bring a ton of structure. That's like what I think we do exceptionally well is that agents that want to achieve at a high level. Most agents suffer from the same thing, which is, we're all ADHD all over the place, tons and tons of, lots of energy, lots of creative energy, but not a lot of discipline around just doing the right things in order each and every day.
I see.
And so the team brings a lot of structure to an agent that's trying to get over a hump because you need to, sometimes you just got to hit the same nail over and over again.
And what do you tell new agents to build relationships, like to get out there? Where do you send them? Tell them to do?
Well, the first thing I tell them is go outside. So the first thing you need to do is get off your couch and go outside and then go find a human being and introduce yourself. It's really not that complicated. Open houses are a fantastic way for people to meet new people. But the fact of the matter is, it's just like you and I. Like we did a ton of business to business networking. Most of the relationships that I got came through knowing somebody who knew somebody. So you have to start just somewhere. So a brand new agent that gets into the business, the first thing I tell them is you got to go to your Facebook, to your phone, and if it takes this, to your high school yearbook, and you literally have to go find 400 people that you have their phone number, email address, and home address.
And build like a CRM.
I need you to start with 400. You have to start with 400 because if you start with 400, you can communicate with all 400 of those people at minimum once a quarter in some meaningful way, not some salesy bullshit way, some meaningful way. You communicate with all 400 of them at a minimum 4 times a year with something of value. And those 400 people are highly likely to turn into about 20 to 30 opportunities.
Wow, from 400.
And that's my entire model. Like that's what we do. Is most agents say, "I know 400 people," and you go, "Yeah, well, where do you keep them and what do you say to them?" And they have no system around it. So our whole model is we bring an agent in and we build that structure, and then we tell them what to say, what to do, and where to go, and we do that for them every single day all year, so that by the end of their first year, those 400 people have turned into at bats.
Is that you have set up like a CRM?
Oh yeah,
something?
we provide all the technology solutions
so they can do that. So and it's just, and again, there's no shortcutting that.
No,
you can't.
No, that's the whole thing. Is like this is what I was saying earlier. Like the new agents to the industry want to jump into the business and go right to Instagram, and you go listen, you can pull the top agents in the state. I could do it on any given moment in time.
It's all public information.
None of them are on Instagram. None of them. Nobody that's one of the top agents.
It's crazy, right?
In the business or even the top teams are running the most
right.
viral.
They have their own personal account.
No, but there are amazing. There are agents that are exceptional at the social media game. They're awesome at it, but they're not selling any houses, or they're not selling the most houses. So all that says to me is that is a tool that probably produces some outcome, but it doesn't produce the best outcome. Because the proof is in the result. The result says the best outcome is coming from people that are talking to more people. So what's that say? Now, Instagram, TikTok, all of that can create opportunities to talk to people. But if you don't follow up with the piece of value, you're still not getting the phone call.
You see any way that changes in the next 10 years?
Yeah, probably. I mean, certainly. Here's my prediction. This is as much doom and gloom as you're going to hear from me.
Okay.
But my son is 18 years old.
Okay.
And he has grown up in a world where when he wanted something to eat, he went on his phone and it showed up at the door.
It's fucking crazy.
Right? Yeah. When he needed something, he said, "Mom, I need something."
It's there the
and
next
it
day.
showed up at the door.
Or that night.
There is an instantaneous experience that this new generation has had, which for all that's created on the negative, on the expectation side, their level of patience is nil.
You got to get back to them very quickly.
They do not have patience. And so But I think that that's degraded their experience. Meaning, I think that what that's done is it's created a complete lack of human interaction. And all
so when they get that, they're like, "Holy shit!"
All of the studies have validated that, right? They don't have. There's now like courses on how to make a phone call. They have no capacity for human interaction, and so, but they have high expectations for instantaneous response. So if I were to predict what I think is going to happen, I would say that if you fast forward 10 years, this generation that's now 18, my son, they'll be 20 in their 20s, and they'll be in that home buying era, and they will struggle to adapt to old farts like you and I, who will say, absolutely, I'm happy to help you. Why don't you come down to the office, sit down with me, we'll go through a process, and we'll get you ready. They will really struggle with that. They'll just be like, can't you just
text me? Text me.
Can't you just send it to me?
Yeah.
Like, no, I cannot just send you the house. Like, can't you just tell me? Like, they're very, very impatient. And so what I think will have to happen is we will have to adapt the process by which we get that generation through a consultation to get them to the point where they're educated enough to make a good decision. Because what I think happens as a result of not slowing down to get information is we make poor decisions. So I want you to imagine that a client calls you and says, hey, I want to get divorced. And you go, okay, what's going on, right? And you probably have a process. You just sit down with them.
There's a consult.
Yeah, what's happening? You know, like you're gonna try to figure out the merits of the case or the merits of their position, whatever, and come up with some solution, right? And if they just were like, I don't want to go through any of that, just send the divorce papers, and you're like, I can't. Like I don't
need to know more.
I don't have the information I need. Yeah, I don't have time for that. Just send me the divorce papers. Like I told you, I just want to get divorced. What people wind up doing is making bad decisions because they're not slowing down to get the information. So I think we're going to see a pendulum. Like I think we may actually already be in it where you're starting to see the elements of that generation realizing the error of those decision making, right? Some of it with did you see the Jamie Dimon JP Morgan thing where he blew up about people going back to work
from home?
Yes.
And then the younger generation went after him.
They just went nuts, like they're like, how dare he, right? Like, and I think of that, I think it's comical. It's like where do you come off at 25 years old criticizing this guy that's built again? I don't know anything about him.
He's got $1 trillion market cap,
love him or hate him, whatever. Right. But like, shut the fuck up and listen to somebody for a second.
Right.
Like, pay attention.
Right.
These people got here for a reason. Your instant gratification culture isn't it. That wasn't what served it. So I think we're going to see this. There's going to have to be a transition. Now, some of like what you said earlier about, I thought Redfin was it. That was going to disrupt the industry. That was their effort. Their design was, can we feed that part of the market? Can we feed that instantaneous result part of the market and get a piece of this $30 billion real estate commission?
No.
The answer is no, because what was missing was the professional fiduciary. Because the only realtor that would take a job at Redfin was the one that couldn't pay their bills trying to fucking make it out in the real world.
Right. Because they get 30, 40 grand a year.
40 grand a year. And they're like, well, I'm making zero now, at least 40 grand something. They literally fell into the door opener role, so that the reason the business couldn't make money is that those agents didn't have the skill set to provide the fiduciary. So no one had a good experience working with Redfin. So when somebody said, hey, you worked with a Redfin agent, how was it? Their response was not so great. They had terrible,
inexperienced agents.
I wouldn't refer this agent, right? So the agent could never build momentum, could never get back, could never build something that had merit to it. And so where is this going to show up in our industry? In my industry, I don't know. I still land on the best way to insulate yourself from it, the best way to be immovable is to have enough people know you who will call you. You may not earn their business, but they'll at least give you a shot. So I have a pretty, I'm fairly confident that the people that I've worked with in my career, before they make a decision, they'll call me. And if they have something in front of them and they go, holy crap, Matt, this new technology solution says it'll do everything you do, but for half price. At least I have a shot. At least I can have the conversation because I've earned it because the relationship's there. Now, some of those people will just call me and say, Matt, you've always been worth it. I'm going to hire you. But some of them will ask for a different option. So we just don't know what that is yet. I don't know what that is yet. Now, again, I think that some of what AI and tech will do is it'll expedite and speed up the relationship building. So the agents in my industry, the attorneys in your industry that use that to create more inbound at-bats will get more market share. But nobody's showing me yet how that's going to work. And I'm more of a wait and see guy. I'm not an early adopter.
Right. So I think that's right. It does create more at bats, which obviously then you still have to be authentic and meet with the person and do it. But yes, I do see the generational issues because my office is run by, I'm about to be 50. My office is run largely by people in their 20s, or Jillian too. And it's funny, people ask me, we don't answer one phone call. People leave messages.
Yeah.
And then we immediately text them back.
Yep.
And a lot of lawyers are like, I give them my cell. I said, because I schedule all my calls. That's one of the things you taught me early on.
Yeah,
You're fucking on the call. You got to schedule it. And a lot of old school lawyers, they're like, how come you don't ever answer your phone? I said, I have to schedule everything. If I'm with a client or I'm lawyering and I'm taking calls from you, like, how am I going to exist?
Right, exactly.
So they have a hard time understanding. And they also have a hard time understanding that the person who runs our firm is in Omaha.
Yeah.
And because she's from Connecticut, but she lives there and she can do everything technologically. She's on Zoom all day. Like, we have no downtime. But so it comes in. And what we find is when the call comes in, we immediately text them because we need a little information. We got to make sure there's no conflict, right?
Yeah,
we have conflict of interest. Maybe we consulted with the husband or the wife. And people love the text. Text is, in our view, we found you get the best response because email. And then you got to also find some people are like emailers, some people are texters, some people are phone call. And you have to figure that out. Like,
correct.
What is your method of communication? Because I know people that I'll email, I never hear back from them.
Yep.
I text them, I get instant response.
100%.
And there's other people that I have to call. They need to hear your voice.
And this is a real life situation. This just happened to me literally last week. I was introduced to a potential client over text by her daughter, who's a real estate agent in another state. And she owns a house here. And her daughter said, hey, Matt, I see that you're a top agent in the area and my mother's going to need somebody. I'd like to make an introduction so you can meet her. So we were introduced over text. So I texted, because we were introduced over text, I texted the woman and I said, so great to meet you. Would love to schedule an opportunity to come out and see your house. And she replied and she said, I'm free on Friday. And I was like, fantastic. How does 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock work? Whatever it is,
right.
The deal. She was like, oh, okay, that works. Great. And I said, if you wouldn't mind, would you provide an email? Because part of our process is before we go to a meeting, we send something via email that tells them a little bit about the team, a little bit about what to expect. Very light sort of introduction to we're going to meet and have a professional consultation. And she replied and said, I prefer phone calls. I don't have access to email other than on my phone. So please call me instead. So I replied and said, that's okay. No problem. I'll give you a call. When I did call her, she said, I told you to call me. And I said, I'm calling you. And she was like, but you texted me too. And I was like, I'm confused. She got mad that I sent the text instead of calling when she said, I prefer a phone call.
Oh, she wanted you to end it right there.
Right. She was not enjoying
that's
I know it's extreme, but to your point, there are people that have this like very specific methodology of how they want to communicate. It was bizarre.
But I found that because one of the things I like to ask people when I meet them, it's one of my questions is, what is your preferred method of communication? We actually have it as a drop down because then you say, okay, some people love email, some people love text, but we find that text is the most effective. Because people are sitting there, you get instant result. It's more intimate than an email.
I agree.
And they come right back to us.
Correct.
And we say we set up a schedule. We like to have a consult and do that. The other thing I found in my business, you'll find this interesting. People are coming for a couple of reasons. Either they know my name, my reputation, and I thought for a while that I'm the only one who can do consults. Right? It has to be me. Right? They're coming for me, and it's actually not true. I don't have to have that. I can have one of the members of my team who's trained in how I operate, and we all have the same sort of operations, and she does all my consults now.
Right.
Unless sometimes somebody says I really want Rich because somebody talked, fine, but she does all the consults and we land them still.
Yeah,
because they're she's trained under the type of in my methodologies and how we do it, and they're getting part of the whole team. So we do find that, but yeah, it's the people do love the texting, and they do love. We find we have a client portal where they can get information, they can check on their case. When there's a court thing, we send them a link, and it shows a video of how to get to the court.
All you're doing is sort of
client experience.
Yeah, exactly. What you're describing is relationship building through technology.
That's right. Because
you're deepening the relationship by giving them access to the things that are important to them, that makes them feel cared for and makes them feel that you're credible, like you're showing them the way. Because what people really want is to be led. So when they come to you and they ask you, what they're really saying is, can you lead me through this? And it's no different in my business. I don't think it's any different in financial planning. I don't think it's any different in insurance. In any professional services business, people are hiring you because they're looking for an outcome, and they're asking for somebody to play the role of Sherpa or guide, or they're just saying, can you please take me through these treacherous waters that are in front of me, because I don't really know how to do it, and I feel like too much is at stake for me to try to do it alone. And there's always those people out there that are like, screw that, I'll do it myself. No problem. Like I'm totally okay with that. Like there's this whole, in my world, there's this whole world of people that scream and yell about for sale by owner. Or,
FISBO.
Who cares? Just let them do it.
Well, the expression is, for a lawyer, is like the person who represents themselves has a fool for a client.
Yes, exactly.
That's the old.
And it's so accurate, and it's the same in our industry. It's like if you're trying to buy or sell a house, and the cost to you is going to be between 2.5% and 3.5% to do that of the total cost of the house. You do the math and go, that's a lot of money. Right, but you're getting somebody that's done it 3,000 times. If you can't validate that value for somebody that's done this 3,000 times, that's seen every angle and every option,
every permutation,
and knows I'm paying that 25 times.
That's right. Well, people come to me sometimes, and I get them in court, and obviously it's a different, right? Your clients are looking for the euphoric feeling. They're going to end up with this house. They're going to feel good. I'm getting somebody who's being sued by or they're suing somebody because it's a lawsuit, right? Yeah. That's somebody that they love or they're still in love with, they had kids with. And all of the major things in their life are being implicated. Their ability to survive, money, kids, everything. So you're taking somebody through the worst fucking thing they've ever gone through. Absolutely. It's like cancer, right? And how am I going to survive? 2 incomes to 1 income. And they're hurt maybe because the person had an affair, whatever. It's a mess. And so I'll say to them, I'm recommending this to you. And then they're fighting me on it. And I said, well, you hired me as an expert.
Totally.
So if you don't want to take my advice, then why bother? What did you? Then you go do it.
Completely.
You go do it. But,
well, go to the whatever the H&R block of law firms is, right?
That's right.
Because that's the
and there are some lawyers there that are I call them the mercenaries, right? Literally, the client will come to them and they'll just literally advocate any position. They won't counsel them and say, you shouldn't do this. You want to be out of court, because court is not it's not a place where there's predictable outcomes. There are some ranges, but you want to be out of there, because people they also underestimate, if you have to go testify and you really have to attack your spouse, if you have kids, one thing, if you have money together, just fucking scorched earth, whatever, it's money, just two adults and you hate each other. But you have kids, you don't realize you're not going to be able to co-parent with that person.
Yeah,
you lay out to the public all the stuff that they have, their erectile dysfunction, they're you're never ever going to be able to do this, and your kids are fucked.
Yeah.
So there's a value there when I say to somebody, don't do this.
Right, you're angry, but the cost of your anger is not going to be worth it.
I would rather pay you. So I said, okay, it's $25,000 for the trial. Give me a check today.
Right.
And then they say, whoa, what do you mean $25,000?
That's where you're headed, right?
So it's, again, my industry is a little different in that, personal injury lawyers, for instance, right? People will look at a bus or a billboard and they'll call, because that's a different type of relationship, right? They want somebody who can get results fast, get the money quickly.
Well, I think it's also a little more transactional.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
and they'll call those people cold.
Correct. Yeah.
And I do get some cold stuff from people just doing searches on the internet, but they don't just say you had top ratings. They read the client reviews. And again, there are some lawyers in the area, one that's been suspended many times, who's got fake reviews, right? And you got to be careful, because reviews can be purchased and all that. But also they do they always say something like, oh, you wrote an article that appealed to me, or you feature your family and I saw you're a family person. There's always that sort of brings them in. It's not just oh, I just got an ad. It's like, oh, I looked at something and I found you authentic. Or the crazy thing is, I have 2 blog posts and they get me the most business. One of them is how to divorce a narcissist.
Okay.
And the other one is how to divorce a spouse with borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
And the joke is, if we had a nickel for every woman that comes in that says her husband's a narcissist.
My husband's a narcissist.
And then the husband who comes in and says, my wife has borderline personality disorder.
No way. That's amazing.
Yeah. So people come in all the time I have one lady knock on the door. Can I see Rich? And they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, hi. And she's like, I just wanted to say that article on divorcing a narcissist is the best article you've ever read.
I love it.
But literally that brings in that much business, because
so
people say that stuff. And so, but yeah, it also has to be, but there is an element with law where people will just call up like, the advertising, right? They just see an advertiser and they're like, oh, I got hit, I got hurt, I'll call them. I think it's a little bit different with family lawyers in divorce because people tend to like, either they'll search or they'll get a referral from somebody. They're like, hey, I'm going through a tough time.
Totally.
Who did you use? So I do feel I'm a little different than the PI lawyers.
Yeah.
Because remember, PI lawyers the best lawyers don't get all the work. The best marketers get all the work.
Correct. Back to that point of, are you in the business for the craft or are you in the business for the influence?
And a lot of times, like, they're taking slip and fall.
By the way, that is exactly the same in our industry.
That's right. Well, that's funny because
there are people who spend their entire career doing nothing but churn and burn in relation. They're not relationship builders. They're just getting the phone to ring. And then they're operating through like close. They're just transaction. And we take the exact opposite approach where it's like, I'd rather have a small audience of people that are in my circus tent and just getting so much value that they would never think of
going
leaving.
Anywhere else, right.
They would never think of it. Like they would obviously there's always a cost to what that value is, but they would always call.
Tell me, interrupt you for a second. Tell me about, once you close the deal and you get your commission, you go to you pick up your commission check and whatever. What do you do? Because this would help for other people, like other businesses, like my business. So somebody gets divorced, we usually send them either these really good cookies, Levain cookies, or flowers, and just say, hey, we wanted to serve you. But what do you do a year after the closing?
Our entire model, driven around relationship, we actually put less and less attention on the transaction and more attention on the relationship. So a really good mentor of mine taught me this early in my career. He said, have you ever leased a car? And I hadn't, but he said, well, if you lease a car, you get a car, it's 3 years, right? And he goes, and so right at the time when you lease the car, you have all this interaction with the dealership. They send you a bunch of stuff, all this stuff happens, and then you don't hear a thing from them.
Never.
Until 3 months before your lease is up.
You start getting mailers.
And then all of a sudden, 3 months before your lease is up, they're calling and they're sending you a golden pass and they show you might get chocolate in the mail. All of a sudden, you're the most important person in the world.
It feels wrong.
It totally. And he said, the thing is that when you're on the other end of that, you fucking know what's happening. It's not like you're being tricked. Like you know, you're like, oh, my lease is up, and so all of a sudden these yahoos suddenly I'm the most important person in the world. So when I heard that, it occurred to me that the industry, all industries, you have to have some transaction. That's the way business operates, right? But if you treat the transaction like the pinnacle point of the relationship, then you're commoditizing your relationship. You're just telling a customer, you're good for me as long as you're buying, selling, or investing in a house. And then when you're not doing that, I don't really care. I hope you call. I hope you remember me. I'll spam you with a bunch of email for the next 7 or 8 years, and I'll send you a bunch of shit, and hopefully you remember
B&I calls it shit-covered chocolate or something.
Okay.
I learned that
that's good.
That's when you send somebody a Christmas card and you put your business card in.
Yeah, it's
awful.
Totally awful.
Yeah.
So when I heard that, and I think you've been to some of these parties. We started throwing the first party we threw was called Harvest Fest. We did that in 2010. I started doing this annual customer appreciation party, and the entire purpose of it was to just say thank you to people. That it was because at the time, again, 2010, 2011, my business started blowing up. We started getting really good at it. I was selling 100 houses a year. It was too many people for me to like regularly communicate with.
All come.
And I just felt bad. I actually started to feel bad. Like oh my God, I fall in love with all my clients. So I'm like, these people are great. Like I love these people. And I don't have time to keep up with them because I'm selling another house or I'm working with somebody else. So I said, I'm just going to throw this big party every year. And the party every year is going to be simple, but it's just going to be all about them. Thank you. We give them gifts.
And you're not pitching them.
No, there's no.
Just
in fact, early on, I remember my assistant at the time was like, you're going to have to say some things. I'm like, I am not saying a fucking thing.
Right.
I'm not getting up on stage. I'm not taking a microphone. This is not about Matt. This is about just me treating everybody to a nice dinner and a nice night out and candidly introducing cool people to other cool people. And that created a little bit of a community.
But that also creates value.
Totally. So that became really the linchpin of how I wanted to build the business, was around this idea of whoever's in my world, I care about you, I love you, and I'm not going to forget about you. But I had to build a system. And so the system became this series of VIP client events. And we run them 8 to 12 times a year. And so there's always a Miale team event going on that you can get invited to or
And it
participate
costs you
in.
nothing.
Well, it's, I mean, and at the end of it, it costs nothing. I mean, obviously we have to pay for it.
No, you.
but
I'm saying it costs the client, the person who's
Oh,
coming.
the client
They're
pays
like, shit,
nothing.
Matt's doing a pig roast.
Yes, the client pays nothing, of course, right? And we've coupled it with Connecticut Food Share. Last year we raised over $25,000
Wow.
that we committed to Food Share. So we've done some really cool community stuff around it. And that the point is that once you're in our world, we don't forget about you,
Right.
And we provide a lot of
Well,
value.
and then they don't forget about you.
Right. And so you said, like, we send them flowers. I found all of that stuff to feel almost in the same vein. Like, I don't want to just say, hey, congrats on the transaction, because that's what you mean to me. I want to say, like, welcome to the party, and we're never going to forget about you. You're part of the family now. Like, we don't forget our people.
And we have really fun events.
And we have fun events, and you know, so there's
and then they're yours forever.
there's this balance
Right.
between, you know, hey, Matt, like, cool, you just throw pig roasts and parties, or do you also do real estate? Oh, no, we give you a lot of value on the real estate side too. But that's not important to you when you're living in your house for another 10 years.
Yeah.
But I don't forget about you, even though you're living in your house for
Thank
10
you.
years.
I'm grateful.
I'm grateful. And I know that you know people, and you probably want to invite some of those people into this party too. So who are they, and how
Right.
can
And
I
then
help
that
them?
person, when they're going to relocate or whatever they
That's
have.
right. So my whole model is, I don't want to say minimizing, like doing a fantastic job during the transaction, but not making the relationship about the transaction. And philosophically, I don't want somebody that I work with to think that the only reason that we're in business or talking is because they might buy a house someday. I want them to understand I genuinely care about you. I want you to win. I want you to think about me when you have a real estate need. But what that's created is, I mean, the name of the podcast is I'll Call My Guy. Right. What that's created is I get a call. I mean, you and I have been friends for a long time. How many times have I reached out to you and said, hey, I have a person who is separating, going through a tough time? Many times. Because they call their realtor first. Bananas. They call me because they're getting divorced. They say, you know,
they trust you.
That's the point of that. Like, I always find it. They call and say, who should I call for financial planning? Who should I call for a patio? Who should I call to paint my yard? I'm thinking about a new job. Do you know anybody that works at this company? Right. I get all of that.
That's right. I said that on a podcast a while ago, and somebody reminded me that. I said, I want the person to call me for a plumber.
Yeah.
Because that means that they trust my judgment.
Correct.
And they know that I know people.
Yeah, I mean, I at this phase of my life, you know, about to enter into being 50, in my 50s, right? I see the evolution from being a practitioner to being a leader. And I think that that's something that guys like you and I really should be embracing, that there's a certain element of, and this is that, call it civic responsibility, that I believe, like, you go through this parenting phase, which you're in and I'm in, but I'm sort of coming to the tail end. Like, my youngest
I still got a while.
Yeah, my youngest is 13. So I'm like, 5 years out before she goes to college. And I realized, like, my job now will be to try to lead and teach and help other people understand not just the tactical parts of business, not that part, but the part about being a good steward of the opportunities you've been given, right? So you and I were given some opportunities that created some pathway for us, and sure, by our grit and our own merit, we were able to grind out things that made it work for us, and yet here we are, and you have a responsibility to foster a path for somebody else. Because if you don't, because that's, I think, what we've lost. Like, everybody sort of just seems to be, I'm just in it for me.
A lone wolf.
Yeah, everybody's sort of just trying to capture as much of it for themselves. And, there's enough. You don't, like, again, I grew up in the 80s in a, pretty modest house in a pretty modest town, and it was fantastic. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And somehow it's all just not enough. Everybody's got to have the fanciest Instagram reel or that's actually, I think, totally in contradiction to the human spirit. Don't believe that's really who we are.
I love it. Matt, thank you so much. This was awesome. You have a lot of insight, and
I appreciate you being one of my guys, one of my longest term guys, and
Love it, man.
hopefully
Thanks.
you'll help.
I love the podcast.
You'll find me a
Congrats.
place in Farmington.
Of course.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks.
getting to work.
All
Thanks,
right.
buddy.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.